Nagbabalik ang Schoolmates. Now that we've already set the scene and set the context kanina of what AYM is about, let's zoom in sa pinaka-inaabang events this August. So Myros, isa sa pinaka-highlights nga daw ng ASEAN Youth Month ay ang ASEAN Youth Advocates Summit or AYAS. So AYAS, right?
Yes.
So, and it will tackle into the topics like identity, environment, livelihoods, which you've also given like context already kanina, na yun yung parang arcing theme din natin, di ba? And of course, hindi natin makakalimutan yung social welfare, di ba? And health, which is primarily after the pandemic is more important now than ever, right? Paano nyo ba napili na ito yung mga sektor na dapat nating pagfokusan, especially with such a broad term like sustainability and inclusivity? And how would you say these topics are relevant now?
I think like a thesis, no? I mean, alam natin as youth, as kabataan, ayaw talaga natin gumagawa ng thesis. But of course, kailangan mo ng prior research.
Right.
And so talagang we look for the recent statistics from the World Bank. Of course, talagang you have to think global but also act local. And so titingnan muna namin yung global issues. And then from the global issues, titingnan natin yung local issues. Of course, we also had to validate it, of course, through the last State of the Nation address of our president and also of the ASEAN summit that's happening. And so, ang rami namin kailangan tingnan na factors. And so, once everything is fit in, I think, actually for me, that's the easy part kasi ang raming problema. Marami tayong problema.
Maraming identify the problem, di ba? Correct.
Well, actually, for context, now I study in Europe. I'm a scholar in Europe now. Doon, hirap sila magkaroon ng problema. Talagang naghahanap lang sila ng problema, I would say.
Love that.
And so,
isn't that such a nice life to have? As a third world country, I can only say, I wish.
And so, compared to here, talagang it's night and day. And so, it's the easy part, of course, and then once we decide on these topics, the hardest part now is to choose the speakers that would be genuine enough to state the real status of these current problems, tackle issues that have to be tackled. And so I think the roster of speakers as well has been really tremendous by the volunteers of the ASEAN Youth Advocates Network. Our Philippines chapter is very active in organizing it. Of course, our global chapter is also, our global office is also really looking into it. And so, yeah, I think the reason why a lot of young people, maraming kabataan ay sumasali is because they really see the relevance in the topics that we give.
Right. You mentioned kanina na marami kang kino-cross-reference in terms of which issues to highlight.
Yeah.
But I guess in all of it, how we choose the relevance is what seems to be the most pressing. Diba?
Yeah.
Kung ano yung, kumbaga, meron tayong echo chamber din na nangyayari sa Pilipinas.
Yeah.
Kung ano yung sinasabi on social media and ano yung bukang bibig ng pangkaraniwang tao, most likely yun din naman yung una mong maiisip na, hindi, ito talaga yung pressing issue natin today. And parang, nung sinabi niya kanina na yung pinakamalalim mong hugot, yun yung magiging advocacy mo. Paminsan kasi I would say na the majority sometimes become blind na wait lang, hindi lang yan yung root cause actually ng issue natin. Mas kailangan natin pag-usapan to because if we solve this, mas marami tayong masusolusyonan at matutulungan, di ba? So I think that's just tying it back, no, na I like how the mission and the vision of your organization is for students, for the youth to actually find what strikes them. Na parang, ito yung, for me, kailangan masolusyon ang problema. Hindi lang tayo dapat nag-identify ng problema. Pero like, finding the solution to that problem should be the pathway.
Yeah.
Personally, I thought that volunteerism ended for me after college.
Yeah.
And it was so sad to hear now, pag kinain ka na ng real-world problems, especially for Gen Zs who are graduating now, you think all this activism, all this volunteerism spirit that you have right now is something you will carry on.
Yeah.
No, sometimes it dies with you. But you have to find those organizations that can find that spark again, na pag-usapan yung mga problema, not as an individual, pero parang, as a collective tayo, kaya natin tong solusyonan, regardless of what stage of life you're in, right?
Yeah,
So,
if I may add, I think it's also very important to take note that most of the big universities nowadays have no student council. I think student
ang tagal na,
student
bago
performance
nagpalit.
has been dying. Talagang student after 2022, I'd say talagang nakita natin yung low
Nag-decline.
engagement ng mga kabataan. And even before, like what you've said, usually nawawala na ang engagement ang mga kabataan after college because of course extracurriculars is part of grades, it's part of
It's part of
resume
their,
building.
yeah. It's a
Talagang that's
line on
true.
their resume.
And as much as of course we can call them cloud chasers, marami tayong pwedeng sabihin about them. It's also our society that enables us.
that. Correct.
Talagang we're driven in a society where certificates are important, especially now in this competitive world. But also, I also want to point out kasi napaka-importante. Like most youth organizations, even sangguniang kabataan, they would always look for the pressing issue. Kaya paulit-ulit ang mga linggo ng kabataan events.
Yeah,
And so,
pageants and basketball, sorry.
yeah.
Just
Well,
had to say that.
there are
Sorry.
good SKs out there.
Okay.
May, of course, ngayon, very booming ang mental health. Ang problema, hindi mga professionals ang kinukuha nila for mental health. And so,
Social media diagnosis.
exactly, marami ng ganyan.
Correct.
And so, I think I would like to reiterate na I think the youth nowadays really fail to fall in love with the problem. And I think dapat nai-inlove ka dapat sa problema, hindi sa solusyon. Tayo mahilig tayo gumawa ng solusyon agad. Lalo na ngayon, kapag may problema, hanapin yung ChatGPT. But like what you've said, you really have to find the core. You really have to find the core, the root cause of the problem. And I think kulang na talaga tayo sa critical thinking. I mean,
Correct.
nakita naman natin yung statistics natin in terms of education. And that I still believe, if you were to ask me what's the biggest problem that has to be resolved by the country, I'm still a big believer that it's education.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pero may question lang ako, 'di ba? Speaking of having certificates, may mga students ba na sumasali just because of gaining certificate na totally hindi naman talaga gusto sumali? Parang for the sake of gaining certificate lang, para may experience lang ako, para may add lang ako sa resume. May experience po ba kayong ganun?
Yeah, and I think kailangan talaga natin siyang tanggapin. At first, I was a big skeptic about it. Talagang, for example, when we were doing online events, dapat may check-in every 10 minutes. Kasi, for example, sa Zoom, ang daling makita ko sino yung tulog lang for the whole
Yes,
event.
yung nawawala.
Log in,
Yeah.
off cam, off mic.
Aminin mo.
And wala. No, I think we've all done it kasi may mga meetings
Yes,
talagang
yes.
nakakatamad. Pero in terms of on-site things, as much as we try to be strict, talagang may makakalusot at makakalusot. And
Right.
so, kailangan talaga natin tanggapin yon. And I think we still give certificates. I mean, at the end of it all, it's a certificate of participation. Hindi
Yeah.
siya of contributions. And which
It's
is why we give a
mediocre,
separate
sorry.
one on that.
Totoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, sir, aside from AS, can you tell us more about the other major events of this month?
So August is a very big month. So now, of course, it's August 14 now.
Yeah.
We started our first event in Miriam on August 2.
Okay.
So we had a speaker it was all about social entrepreneurship and sustainability. So one of my friends who I've met is a startup that created this app to create plants in indoor spaces. Kasi meron siyang device na nakikita niya yung air quality ng most indoor areas and talagang malala, pangit. Especially, I mean, kita naman natin outside within the Philippines. And so we also have online events, but also our local chapters, our 8 local chapters around ASEAN are doing their own events as well. So for example, in Laos, they're doing human rights events. Brunei is more on climate action and education. And so they're doing a big series right now. I think they're the biggest youth organization in Brunei right now. We're doing events in Indonesia, of course, with Malaysia as the chair. We recently co-presented the Rain Forest Action Youth Summit. So it was in the indigenous tribe and indigenous community in Sarawak in Malaysia. And so marami nangyari, of course, but it's also big internally because we get to know who the next Secretary General of ASEAN would be. We get to know the new officers. We get to know. So maraming organizational shifts, maraming events ang global office, and of course, maraming events ang chapters. And so, yeah, talagang it's a festival. And it can, I'm not saying that ASEAN Youth Month is perfect. I think it can definitely be improved. But I think now, if I were to self-criticize myself, it's still very Philippine-centric. Of course, may
Correct.
excuse ako for next year kasi Philippines ng chair ng
Yeah.
ASEAN. We will be the
Okay,
hosting
love that.
country. But I think as the years go by, talagang we want it to be a festival talaga. Kaya
Yeah.
it has to be a festival and a celebration of young people and our community as ASEAN, as Southeast Asia.
Sorry, I want to go back to how you said na ASEAN is very Philippine-centric. I would agree because in our country, we make it such a big thing to talk about ASEAN. But then again, we fail to see that ASEAN is not just Philippines.
Yeah.
Yes.
Na parang kailangan yung
Tayo yung bida.
Oo, bida-bida lang yung Pilipinas.
It's all
sorry.
about us. Ano to?
Yeah, totoo. But then I would say na it's right kasi iba yung issues natin ngayon. But we can definitely see a mirroring issue in other countries as well. So parang syempre, the way for us to find the solution is to check how other countries also try to find the solution to that.
Yeah.
Another thing that I'd like to ask is, how do you, pinag-usapan natin ito off-screen, very cliquish, exclusive, the words that we use in ASEAN Youth Month and the Sustainable Development Goals even at the very core are very exclusive to those who have a higher level of education.
Yeah.
How do you, I'm just curious, what kind of events are you doing to make sure that it's brought back down to the community roots? Like, have you hosted, I've heard a couple of
Tanong ko
names of
sana
school.
yan.
Diba?
Oo.
Yung number of schools. But then, we would know that it's just the select few schools.
Yeah.
How do you open up that conversation to the other types of, other schools in the far-flung areas?
Yeah, I think malaki siyang challenge sa amin because we are an ASEAN-wide organization. And so
Okay.
first, talagang gusto namin we rely on the local chapters to do that.
Okay.
But if they can't, that's where our partnerships really go into. I think one thing that we've been trying to do is make ASEAN Youth Summits. We call it Youth Advocate Summit that we do every schools pre-pandemic when we were still a
Okay.
Philippine organization. This is something that we want to do school by school.
Okay.
Also, we also recognize na
It's like a
kapag-
roadshow for
yeah,
the
exactly.
different schools.
But
Love
also, we also recognize that we're not the best when it comes to dealing with grade school and high school kids.
Okay.
I think social workers are very important when it comes to this. And so we partner with organizations that really are best catered to this.
Okay.
One of the organizations is I Am Making a Difference, that where we send some of our volunteers to, kung gusto talaga nilang lumapit sa grassroots, talagang
Okay.
dun sila sumasali. I think we want to do everything. Of course, yun yung pangarap ko sa organization. I want it to be my full-time job
But you
and
can only
everything.
do so much.
But you can only do so much. Talagang voluntary. And so,
Correct.
am I doing
You're doing everything
enough?
you can.
Yes, we're doing
Yes,
everything
you're
that we
doing
can.
everything you
But
can.
in the future, I think one of the ways that we're moving forward is by 2030, we hope to have this advocacy center in Bicol because we had a lot of sponsors that really wanted us to make this sustainable event place
Okay.
and farm
Okay.
in Bicol in Camarines Sur. And so
Sustainable ecotourism is also.
yeah, so I feel like once we do that, mas madali mag-reach out.
Correct.
And so eventually, kailangan talaga ng infrastruktura at ng
Oo.
suporta ng lahat ng stakeholders, ng government, ng private sector para mas ma-reach out
Love
ang
that.
mga kabataan. For now, we're just really building our brand.
And actually, sir, ang ganda na na-mention mo, no, since we're talking about inclusivity and knowing the Philippines, sobrang ang daming grupo na dapat isama sa isang layunin. Like for
Oo.
example, this kind of advocacy natin na we're talking about engaging everyone in terms of LGBTQ, indigenous groups, na dapat talaga may spot din sila dito. And
Correct.
kasali dapat sila. Kasi ayun ang layunin natin.
Yes, yes. And siguro parang just to have a quick break because I think the schoolmates are also getting info overloaded.
Yes.
So sana nandiyan pa
Bombarded
kayo.
na sila.
Parang Zoom to, no? Meron tayong check-in.
Yeah.
Hello, nakikinig pa ba kayo? Nandito
Crash
tayo
course.
ngayon, correct. Sa quick trip around ASEAN. So sa mga nakakaalam dyan, this is a quiz round. Wow! Quiz!
Wow.
In 30 seconds lang naman. We would do it rapid fire style, okay?
Okay.
So no overthinking, just instinct.
Okay.
So let's see how the advocacy passport holds up. Okay, go.
Let's go.
First, speak now or organize behind the scenes.
Speak now.
Speak now. Advocacy, born or built?
Boring or built?
Born or built?
Built.
Built, okay.
Personal passion or shared mission?
Shared mission.
Shared vision. Okay, workshops or mentorship?
Mentorship.
Mentorship.
Long game or quick wins?
Long game.
Change policy or change minds?
Change minds.
Change minds. Parang ako
Gusto ko
din
yung
naisip
naisip
doon.
ko
Okay.
Hirap.
Okay, ito. Career advocate or lifelong volunteer?
Lifelong volunteer.
30 seconds na yun. 30 seconds
Sayang,
na
gusto ko
yun.
sana makuha lahat
Pwede bang
eh. Sayang.
Try lang namin. Meron
Sige,
pa,
sige.
may isa. Sustainability or impact?
Impact.
Impact, okay.
Awareness or action?
Action.
Okay. Climate justice or economic justice?
Climate justice.
Okay.
Agree. Hindi ka lang agree sa dulo.
Agree agad
Agree
siya.
ako doon
Okay,
sa
okay.
climate justice.
Well, ang bilis niyo mag-isip. Ako din nag-isip, ano ba yung sasagot ko
Oo,
dito?
diba? Sobrang
Okay.
solid nun. Thank you, Sir Maya Rose, for navigating that round with clarity and conviction. Ngayon, huwag kayong bibitaw because we've got lot more coming up. Dito lang sa Schoolmates!